Welcome back to our study called Two Nations. And today we're looking at Genesis 25, 19 through 26. And we're going to start with looking at a test of faith here. Remember back when Abraham's servant brought Rebekah to Isaac, we're told that Isaac loved Rebekah. In verse 20, we got the fact that Isaac was 40 years old when he and Rebekah finally get married. When he was introduced to Rebekah, she was described as a young maiden, which most likely made her probably in her teens somewhere, She was a young woman. So the fact that we're told how old they are, I think is important when we come to verse 21. It says there that Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. This sounds familiar. It's because Abraham and Sarah had the same problems with infertility. The test of faith had come to Isaac. Is he the answer to the promise then? It had to come to their mind because I'm supposed to be the promised child. I'm supposed to, from Abraham's descendants, which I am one, we're supposed to have all these other descendants. How is that possible if I can't have any kids? That's kind of the same questions that probably came to Abraham and Sarah's mind. We're coming now to Isaac and Rebekah. It was a test of faith. How could this be true? How would the covenant continue if Rebekah can't conceive? For 20 years, this couple had to wait. For 20 years, they had to have these. The first year goes by and you're like, okay, it's just a year. But the second, third, fourth, 10 years, 20 years out. And you're like, man, how is this going to happen? We're getting older, Our bodies are not going to function the same way anymore. Eventually Rebekah is going to get to the place where she won't be able to have kids, just like Sarah. So, how is God going to do this? What does Isaac do? Isaac sets out to pray. So he says a prayer, and he sets his prayer before God. He gives the request before the Lord, but he had to wait. It makes you wonder when he started praying for Rebekah to have children. Did he pray once and then she had a child? Did he wait 20 years before he prayed to God? I find that hard to believe. I'm guessing that he was praying for a while. That he was asking God, please, Lord, make her so she could have kids. So, Moses skips the 20 years of testing and goes right. He jumps right for it's 20 years. Like, Moses, what happened in the 20 years? He doesn't tell us. Sometimes, why did the Holy Spirit have, why these gaps of time? Is there nothing important to happen? I'm sure there's a lot of important things that happen. But 20 years goes by in their relationship, in their lives. Moses jumps right to those, from the beginning of those years of testing, and goes right to the fact that God hears and answers the prayer. But we don't want to miss those 20 years, though. We don't want to forget about the testing that was happening. Charles Naylor said, "We cannot hurry the Lord. All time is His. He works according to His own purposes and will, according to His own wisdom and plans. We cannot choose for Him. We must be willing for Him to choose for us. It must be His to say both as to when and how. Ours is to wait and trust. He is to choose and do." So that's what Isaac and Rebekah had to do. They had to wait. It was up to God to say when and how. He had already promised that it would happen, but they had no idea when and how it was going to happen. And so they had the if question already taken care of in the promise of God, in the covenant that God made with Abraham. But when and how, they had no idea. So they had to wait to see that happen. So eventually, Rebekah conceives here 20 years later. She's conceived, she's pregnant. Now I'm sure Rebekah was like all other expectant mothers. There's a mixture of joy and excitement and concern. But as Rebekah's pregnancy progresses, there's a problem. So much so that she has to pray to God about it. She's like, what is happening? What is going on inside of me? What is happening in my womb? This is not normal. This is not right. And so the great thing is, what does she do? She prays. You can hear it even in her words. Why is this happening to me? There's that anxiety there, like, what is going on? Why is this happening to me? So something's really happening inside of her, and she's like, this is not normal. And she goes to prayer, just like Isaac, who is in distress. She goes to inquire of the Lord herself. Why is there so much turmoil in her womb? Why is there so much problems going on? Why is her abdomen out of control? And God speaks to Rebekah and tells her what's going on. Rebekah was pregnant with twins. These two, though, twins, were two nations, two different peoples that will be divided from each other, even from birth. The turmoil that she was experiencing was just the beginning of what will play out in the future. The one will be stronger than the other, he says. Now, if you look at biblical history, we see that Israel beats up on Edom in battle on several occasions. God also says that the older twin will serve the younger. The one that, by birthright, should lead the family will not be the leader. In Romans chapter 9, God explains why all this is important. Why do we need to know this? Why is this part of the story? Why did God do this? Why did God give them twins? And why didn't he have them be separate from the very beginning? Well, in Romans chapter 9, Paul tells us that the Israelites had the adoption, they had the glory, they had the covenants, the giving of the law, the worship, and the promises. To them belong the patriarchs, right? That's who we're talking about, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And from their race, according to the flesh, is Christ. The problem of why, then, aren't all Jews saved? Because if they're all descended from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, shouldn't they all be saved? Shouldn't they all be followers of Christ, just like they were? Well, God chose Isaac, is what Paul says, not Ishmael, for Abraham's offspring to be named. God says in Romans 9:8, this means that it's not the children of the flesh who are the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring. God again points to Rebekah having Jacob and Esau, and the proclamation that he made the older will serve the younger. Why did God state that? Not because they had done anything good or bad, but in order that God's purpose of election might continue. Not because of works, but because of him who calls, who is, of course, God. Why were some Jews saved and recognized the Messiah? Why were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob the patriarchs of the faith and not Nahor, Ishmael, or Esau? Why does God say, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated? His answer is simply, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy. I'll have compassion on whom I have compassion. Now, we might not like that. We might not like that answer, but that is the answer that is given. Why is it Jacob and not Esau? God chose him. Well, you might think that's not fair. We need to have, Jacob should have had his own choice. Esau should have been able to choose what he wanted. And it's not fair that God chose Isaac over Ishmael. It's not fair that God chose Abraham over Nahor. It's not fair that he did that. And really, the only answer that God gives you is, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. God plays the God card. I'm God. I created all things. I know what is right. I know what is good because I am goodness. You think I'm wrong? Then you're the wrong person. You're not thinking correctly. You don't know what is right and what's wrong. And you've gotten confused. And so you think you were doing everything. You think you get to choose what's going on. You think you get to decide whether you're a Christian or not. God says, nope. I choose. I do that. That's my prerogative. I'm God. And so that's the answer. Now, we may not like it, but that's what it is. So we go back to Genesis 25, 24 through 26 here. In this part of the story, we find that the birth of the twins here described, and some signs of what the future holds for Jacob and Esau. So first we see Esau is the firstborn. It says he's ruddy, or red, and hairy. The redness of Esau we'll see in a moment, and we'll see that again in the next story, and we'll see the hairy part come up again in chapter 27. So these details are not insignificant. Moses is connecting this story with the future stories. The red part will come up right again with the lentil soup, but the hairy part comes up when we have Jacob and how he gets the blessing of Jacob, or how he gets the blessing of Isaac. So, in the story here, we find Jacob is born second, and he's holding his brother's heel on the way out. So Esau is birthed, but Jacob's hand is on Esau's foot as he's being born, which is kind of funny to think about. But that's what happened. And so he is given a name that means really like the heel grabber, or the fowler, or the cheat. That's what his name means. And all those things are very true of this boy from the very beginning. And it's very interesting to see that his name was fitting and his actions were very fitting from the very beginning, right out of the womb. And we'll see how all that plays out as we go through the story of Jacob and Esau.